Richard Wiseman began his career as one of the youngest ever members of the Magic Circle, a calling that climaxed with the trick of a lifetime when he locked himself in a university and emerged 3 years later as a fully qualified psychologist. Since then, he's become a professor at the University of Hertfordshire and is the most cited and, I'd have to say, the most entertaining psychologist working in Britain today, with no fewer than 30 glamorous assistants to call his own. Some interesting things here, Richard, about self-knowledge, some little simple tests you can do.
Yes. These are tests that I did for the Quirkology book, and they're just very quick things where you can tell something about yourself. For example, if you take your first finger of your dominant hand, everyone can do this actually, and draw on your forehead a capital Q. Very good. Now just leave your finger where you had the tail of the Q. And there's two ways of doing this. That tail will either be over your right eye or your left eye. And I didn't say which way to do it, and I didn't do it myself, so hopefully I didn't influence you. So around about half of you will have it over the right eye, the other half over the left eye. And that tells us a huge amount about you.
And that's the end of the show,
that's the end of that one, yeah.
yeah.
So this is self-monitoring, which is an interesting psychological trait. And it's whether you see yourself as others see you, or you're more, for want of a better word, self-centred and see the world from your perspective. So if you did the Q as if somebody opposite you could see it, so you had the tail over your left eye, then you're a high self-monitor. You're seeing the world as somebody looking at you. And that means you're a very good liar. If you have it over the right eyebrow, then you're a low self-monitor. You tend to see the world from your viewpoint, and you're very, very self-obsessed and selfish.
Well, you'd be self-obsessed too if you were me.
What if it goes in the middle? What does...
We didn't understand the instructions.
Yeah. You've drawn a lollipop, Kevin. Richard, as part of your studies, you claim to have discovered the funniest joke in the world.
Yes. It was a year-long search, so we had 40,000 jokes sent in and 1.5 million ratings of them. And what we could do was break down the data by different countries. And it turned out that the country with the worst sense of humour, as in didn't find the jokes at all funny, was the Canadians. And they got very upset by this. There were questions asked in the Canadian Parliament about why their country had no sense of humour. Which reinforced the notion. And then it got worse, because we found the country with the best sense of humour that found the jokes funniest was actually the Germans. And there were lots of questions asked in the Canadian Parliament at that point. So yeah, it was a good year.
You're not going to share this joke with us, are you? I know they're all on tenterhooks here.
The problem is that I've told the world's funniest joke again and again, and it's rubbish. The actual one was the two hunters that go into the woods, and one falls onto the ground motionless, and the other one panics, and he takes out his mobile phone, he calls emergency services, he said, "You have to help me because my friend's laying on the floor motionless." And the person in emergency services says, "Calm down, we're here to help. First of all, we have to make certain he's dead." And there's a pause, and then a gunshot, and the hunter says, "OK, now what?" It's the best reaction he's ever got, actually.
There are a lot of Germans in tonight. You actually got a computer to write some of the jokes, didn't you?
Yes.
Now, that must be a first, surely.
And a mistake as well. The best computer joke was, what kind of murderer has moral fibre? A serial killer.
What do you think, John?
The day a computer laughs at someone who thinks they're going to walk into their garden and they slam their face into a glass door, that's when they understand comedy.
Ladies and gentlemen, Richard Wiseman.
Okay.
Kevin Eldon has been a component of pretty much every decent British comedy project for the last 2 decades, including I'm Alan Partridge, Big Train, Brass Eye, Jam, Smack the Pony, Spaced, 15 Stories High, Look Around You, Black Book, Stuart Lee's Comedy Vehicle, Charlie Booker's Dead Set, Hyperdrive, Saxondale and Hot Fuzz. Let me ask Kevin, do you feel threatened by computerised comedy?
Not computerised jokes, so they don't sound as if they're going to split your sides, really, do they? Because comedy is about defying logic, and good jokes surprise you. Having said that, though, a lot of jokes made by humans follow a very strict formula. I mean, if you're ever stuck with the joke bore, who insists on giving you shaggy story after shaggy stories, It's tedious, but I've actually found a way of dealing with that. What I do now is, once you identify what is 7 seconds before the punchline, which becomes very easy, and laugh like a maniac for about a minute, and then gradually turn that into racking sobs. And then start eating the table, and then say, tell us another one. That usually shuts them up.
One thing you may not know about Kevin is that he's a practicing Buddhist. How long have you been a Buddhist?
About 20 years now, actually. A friend had got into it, and it was obviously a lot happier than he had been before, and I was quite inspired by this. And I was actually at a bit of a loose end, looking for a sort of life-transforming philosophy that didn't externalise the Godhead. And that one came along.
I've got a friend who's a Buddhist, and it obviously makes people feel better in the way that maybe going for a run might make you feel better, or eating proper food and so on. Do you find that? Is it the actual process of doing the chant that helps?
Well, the chant is very energising. You should think of a Buddhist practice as being meditating, which chills you out. But after chanting it, I feel always very, very fizzy. So it's an enervating type of thing. But the thing about Buddhism is that you must take responsibility for your life. The good aspect of it is that you have the potential to do that.
I don't understand, though, how just chanting something would do all that.
Yeah, it's one of those things which you find either works for you or doesn't. And so I went into it with a very sceptical mind indeed. But I thought I'd give it a bash. And immediately I started feeling less anxious and just better in myself.
God, I tell you what, though, if I lost my anxiety, I think I'd be a rubbish writer. Like, every bit of good I've ever done has come from a position of anxiety.
Yeah, but the thing is about getting into Buddhism is that suffering is inherent in the world, so the problems will never stop. In fact, you don't want the problems to stop because, as you say, they are the fuel for your creativity and for keep challenging things and growing things.
So you're still allowed to turn the anxiety on when you're at your desk writing, and then you can turn it back off again at night.
If you want to,
Like the drummer, Oliver Sacks. Remember, he had a patient who had Tourette's, and he cured the guy, and then he got really upset because his Tourette's had made him a great drummer. So then he kind of reprogrammed him so that he would be kind of all right all week, but then at weekends when he plays in the jazz club... he'd get his Tourette's back.
Can I ask you about the trying to be positive? How much do you accept that sometimes you're just down? Because I had a day where I tried to just be positive about it, and it was exhausting. Like, I got early on a train. I was 15 minutes earlier than the train I thought I was going to get. I was delighted. Then we sat at Reading for 20 minutes, and I was livid because I'd lost time. And then I saw the train manager, and he looked sad, and I thought it's not his fault, and I tried to be happy about it again. And then the guy in front of me took a call on his speakerphone, and then I was furious again. And it's easier just to be pissed off by everything.
Just lastly, Kevin, you used to have another alter ego as a poet, Paul Hamilton.
Paul Hamilton is, I think, me if I'd kept on in my earnest punk lyricist mode for the rest of my life.
Do you have any of his work with you?
Okay, this is a poem called Acceptance. Hirsute lesbian, I love you. Freedom's gorilla, I salute you. Bipolar Inuit, I embrace you. Come you all to my home. I have muffins.
Ladies and gentlemen, Kevin Eldon. Finally, John